Welcome to Keynote number 2. Innovation is disruptive, it's messy, and both are good. Response has been excellent to the Innovation Fest. All the signups have been coming in. They're looking great. Chris, Crystal, and I have continued to work behind the scenes again in this iterative fashion to prepare for the big day. And I love seeing the comments that were written down in the registration form. Some of the what do I hope to learn comments. Lots of comments about new ideas and new processes that folks hope to learn. Tools and techniques to bring back home to your home library. Creativity and inspiration, gaining that from others. Having fun, that was a theme throughout. Having fun in the pop-up community at the event and beyond. And my favorite was really, really simple. Just new ways to do stuff. Now, your teams have been formed and it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work. So who needs this anymore? It's time to get down to business. What challenges do we face in libraries in terms of innovation, and how can we overcome them? I think it's when we mix up form and function. For instance, many equate the library with specific forms and specific formats, right? Like books, quiet spaces, etc., instead of the function of most public spaces, which I believe is providing information, access, ideas, and enrichment at no direct cost as a publicly funded good. I feel there are infinite formats for those items, and I like to embrace the ones that work, and I'm really happy to let go of the ones that don't. Ideally, all the forms and formats support the outcomes, but it doesn't always play out that way. Teachers have the same conundrum. Some pursued the teaching gig because of the idea of having summers off, right? Then there's teachers who love to teach. They just have to teach. Those are the ones who are always consumed with new ideas and new ways to connect learners to information and skills all year round. And they don't let anything get in their way to achieve that goal. I know some librarians who pursued their degree because they thought it was the easiest path in school. Surprise! Others I know did it from a passion deep inside them to help people preserve intellectual freedom or just make their communities better places. That's the spirit we need to foster innovation. Again, it is the fire in the belly and then manifesting that in innovation. So let's talk about iterative change using a real-world example. For instance, what did we learn technically from the first keynote, and how did we roll it into this one? The whole concept of serial keynotes is brand new, and we took on the challenge with no fear, and also with the knowledge that some things would work better than others, especially as we went. So this round, we tried to improve things like camera focus and color, as well as the lighting to ensure things like chroma key would work better, like this. Well, maybe like this. Let's try this. All right, that's nice. So what worked great? Well, this is being recorded in my living room with pets running around. Actually, our pet is at our feet. No, we won't show you the shot because that's a cheap shot in a video to put in a puppy or a kitten. Stuff going on outside and family activities taking place all over the place. So I'm happy actually that anything worked at all. Originally, we conceived of these as being simple as a webcam recording, but instead we're inspired to go further, enjoying all the rewards and learning from the failures as we go. So we were totally fine with the things that didn't quite work out initially, but we're really thrilled to make improvements. So I hope it's improved for this version. Why is innovation important to other disciplines, and how does it play out there? Well, we all know that the new is a thing. We miss sight, though, that often the new is often about more than ideas, but also strategic considerations. This plays out especially in the commercial field. For instance, Apple's decision to eliminate the physical headphone port on the iPhone has caused a stir, right? In the past, Apple has led the way in changing and eliminating things like the optical drive. That was a pretty good idea. But Apple also bought the Beats headphone company a year ago. Simply put, innovation, especially marketable innovation, is a competitive advantage. That's why tech companies host their own events like Hackfests, instead of the concept that thinking outside the box is something that's a special event. It becomes a permanent perspective and even a way of life, all in pursuit of how can things be better and what can I do to help, which leads me to our next thought. We're in an idea economy. So what's the difference between innovation and just having a great idea? Well, it's tough love time. Great ideas are not as rare as they used to be. You don't even need to have your own ideas these days. All you have to do is dip your toes into the Twitter or Instagram streams, and you'll have ideas coming out of your ears. That presents a conundrum, I think. I do a lot of recruiting, and I've talked to library people who think of themselves as innovative because they have great ideas, and they do have great ideas. But when we drill down, though, sometimes it becomes apparent that some of these folks have never taken that last step, and that's actually making things happen. That's hard, but it's necessary, and it's part of the innovation loop. Just like the phrase, pics or it didn't happen, results, or it's not innovative. Without testing it, how can you really know if it's innovative or not? I think fear of failure is one of the constraints here, and I hope that you can throw that out the window. More on that in a bit. Some people do have the problem of generating ideas, right? While others have the opposite problem. They're just bursting with ideas, so how do they pick just one? A couple of approaches include criteria, constraints, and teaming with others. And for criteria, I'd like to thank Joan Fry-Williams. She's another library consultant I've worked with, and that's one of the first things that Joan whips out when we're talking about things that we want to do. And a lot of people have criteria, but they don't necessarily voice criteria. And so writing things down that you're trying to achieve, that's a really good thing. Constraints are also good. Time and budget are good ones to put up as a measure. And that's, again, these are, if you're having trouble honing in on just one idea, if you've got a million good ones, look at the constraints. Which ones have a chance of living or thriving? Another is pretty simple and kind of what we're doing in the Fest, and that's teaming with others with complementary skills to help work things out. So if you're someone who likes to rush forward, then someone who can hold back and be more contemplative may be a good match. And the same goes for your hard skills, and together they can just fit together just like, like my fingers. No matter your approach, here's a few tips to help make the transition from idea to action. Number one, look at things from multiple angles and multiple perspectives. This is something that we see in other disciplines by having personas. These are archetypes of different types of people, for instance, who use our services, and we try to design services around them. That's a good idea to think, how does this service look to a lot of different folks, especially the folks we know who use our library. Number two, once you're past the brainstorming piece, think about the whole process, but made up of different stages. For example, for the Innovation Fest, those stages might be having the idea, creating the project for the Innovation Fest, the development of that idea over time, and then the implementation. So once the brainstorm is done, kind of lay the steps out and see how it looks over time and space. That can be really, really helpful. Number three, don't forget to build in evaluation to your project. Evaluation can come in a number of forms, but don't leave it out. It's important to have some deliberate measures of the results of your project, even if it's just anecdotal. So what about the F word? And of course, I'm talking about failure. Is it okay? Taking calculated risks and learning from failure, is that possibly okay? Well, of course it's okay. But I want to give it a little bit more complexity as you're thinking about the role of failure when we're thinking about innovation. Now, we've heard the term failure is not an option, and that is absolutely true if you're trying to pump the team up in a life or death situation, like depicted in the movie about the Apollo 13 rescue efforts from Earth, right? Or the things like brain surgery or other endeavors with crucial outcomes. Yes, in those cases, we can put that pressure on us, say failure is not an option, and make it happen. And there's quite inspirational stories that come from that. In our lives in libraries, though, there is little or perhaps nothing that fits into that category. Whether we allow ourselves or not, I believe we actually have the space to try things and learn from our experiences. So, if you're with me on this, we might instead want to adopt Adam Savage's motto from the show Mythbusters, which is, failure is always an option. Certainly, the path to success is a road of things that worked great and some not so great, with learning happening all the way. So what we want to do is fail like an inventor. If you'd like some additional information, Deanna Brown and Elizabeth Ramsey of Boise State University recently published an article called Translating Failure into Success, celebrating how some librarians are tweeting with the hashtag #LibraryFail to call out and find humor in things that just don't quite work out well. Nina McHale, who's now at Red Rocks Community College in Colorado, helped organize fail panels in Colorado and at the LEADA conference, where we all got together, we shared our fails and what we learned in front front of a live audience. It was one of the funnest sessions. They were always packed, and we all learned something from each other. I highly recommend that if you have a chance to organize one of those or do them. They are fun, and then everyone heads to the bar afterwards to forget about them. Innovation is an ongoing exercise in disruption. It might be helpful to think of this process as birth and rebirth, and over and over and over. Again, it starts with vision and enough details to define things. What is it that I want to accomplish, followed by methods or ways of doing things that may or may not work. We need to be ready to embrace the stuff that works and quickly abandon what doesn't on the road to achieving our vision. One of the most exciting things I've seen lately is a video showing modern-day teens reacting to Windows 95. For those of us who have been around since the internet was a baby, it's fun to laugh at the kids react to old and archaic ways of using a computer. But what impressed me is how they used their critical reasoning skills to interpret the vague messages we would see from Windows 95. Even though they were a little thrown off by the way to do things in that archaic operating system, they certainly knew what they wanted to accomplish, and they kept trying until they had success. We've had some great examples of the idea of disruption, birth, and rebirth in the tech sector certainly, but also in libraries. And I would like to point to two in particular. One is the Anythink libraries in Colorado and the Chattanooga Public Library. At Anythink, there's been a lot of revolution that has happened there, and it's something you can look up or you may already be familiar with. But I would say through all the revolution that they did, in terms of the branding of the library and the image of the library in the community and their connection with the library in the community. One of the results that I think is the most striking from someone who lives in Colorado and who has been able to see that transformation is how staff feel about themselves. They used to be called the Rangeville Library District, and they were the underdogs. They were really underfunded, and so over time they were able to change that funding. They had a change in leadership, which was dramatic and brought dramatic changes. But before, staff there felt like underdogs, and over time they started walking tall and being very, very connected. You know that translates into the services that they're giving to patrons and improving that. So that is, to me, is a huge example of disruption, birth, and rebirth. Chattanooga Public Library is the same thing, thinking about our modern makerspace movement and the way that Nate Hill approached makerspaces at the library there, taking all of the junk out of a floor that was used for storage, polishing up the actual floor, the concrete floor, putting in some fast Wi-Fi, and inviting really awesome people, interesting people to come into this space and to play and to make it their own. These are good examples to look at and to look at their successes and their failures to use as inspiration for this idea of disruption, birth, and rebirth, and especially failing like an inventor on the way to success. Finally, how can we make innovation a way of life? Innovation can also be small, or it can be incremental change or improvements. It doesn't have to be huge. And an example that I hope we all know and love, I certainly do, are sticky notes, right? It's a pretty simple concept, a piece of paper with glue that doesn't leave residue, and you can write on it. You can do a billion other things, and I think we'll have those in different formats at the Innovation Fest as well. They're all over our lives. That's pretty small, but it made a huge impact. As you're preparing for your projects, I'd like to invite you to be fearless and fit the solution to the problem, okay? So paint with grand strokes if that's what it takes, or perhaps it's a slow, small, and steady meter. Just match what you want to do with what you're trying to do. And I think incredibly great things are going to happen. So there are lots of possible paths when innovating, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, including the disruption approach and innovation by evolution. We can do one fell swoop, or you can just take little baby steps. So keep your sleeves rolled up. Innovation Fest is just around the corner. We'll see you in keynote number 3.